Good afternoon, Mr. Matthew. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us. My name is Kristen with World News Network.
I'm happy to meet you, Miss Kristen.
Thank you. As you know, today we're going to talk about visa policy in the United States. And before we get started, I was just wondering if you could just briefly explain the criteria that the United States government uses to refuse visa applicants.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about the criteria that we use to evaluate visa applicants. Before I go into the details, though, let me just let you know that the United States message about visa applications in Lecitan is that we want more visitors to the United States. We want those visitors to be qualified, and when they come to apply for a visa, we treat them equally. U.S. doors are wide open. We want to kick the doors wide open so that Lecitanis can come to the United States, those who are qualified, so that we can have increased and heightened cultural, commercial, and trade exchanges. Visiting the United States is key to the U.S. efforts to show the world what America is really like. So we're happy when Lecitanis can come to the U.S., those who are qualified, and then come back to Lecitan. We want Lecitanis to pop in and pop out.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew. You mentioned that you want to kick those doors wide open.
That's right.
What about the doors for the 24% of applicants who are refused? You seem to close the doors on the Lecitani citizens. Could you explain why?
Well, like I said, the U.S. visa application procedures are designed to both welcome qualified foreign visitors to the United States, as well as to protect America's safety and security. The way that we do that is by carefully screening each applicant on an individual basis according to American law. The standards, which are laid out in the American Immigration and Naturalization Act, basically state that for a foreign applicant to qualify for a U.S. visa, he or she needs to prove that he or she intends to return to his home country.
Yes.
We want more of those qualified Lecitani applicants to apply for a visa so that they can go to the U.S., learn about the U.S., buy American products and sell us products, and then come back to Lecitan so that we can have a strong economy here and in the United States.
Thank you. I understand that the average visa interview lasts for maybe 2 minutes. I'm not sure how a consular officer can assess a person's qualifications in less than 2 minutes.
Well, let me tell you about what that consular officer is doing. When the applicant comes in to do his application at the American Embassy in Lecitan, the consular officer is responsible for learning about the basic circumstances of that applicant, as well as his or her travel plans for the United States. What we have found is that applicants who come from a stable background here in Lecitan, and what I mean by that is they have a stable job with a good income, they perhaps own assets or property here in Lecitan, they have family members who are here, those people are able to prove that they have the strong enough ties to their home country as required by law that we can believe that they're very likely to come back. Now, according to the most recent statistics, for the year 2008, we issued non-immigrant, that is tourist or business visas, to approximately 10,000 Lecitanis. Unfortunately, of those 10,000 who got visas to go visit the U.S., 2,000 of them, we estimate, failed to return. Now, when I say we want to increase the number of qualified visitors who go to the U.S., that's something we need to work on together. In order for more Lecitanis to go to the U.S., we need them to, like I said, pop in and then pop out. Right.
Mr. Matthew, thank you. As you know, the United States and Lecitan are allies, and Lecitan is a member of NATO. Could you explain why the United States requires Lecitani citizens to be fingerprinted like common criminals?
Sure, but first of all, I disagree with your characterization that we're treating our applicants like common criminals. Instead, the visa fingerprinting process, I'd like to point out, it's not like what you do when you go to the police station. There's no ink involved. You just put your fingers on a digital scanner that reads your fingerprint. This is part of America's efforts to protect our borders and protect visitors and American residents alike. What we have found is after the terrible tragedy of 9/11, while the U.S. had been very open to visitors, we hadn't been doing a good job of keeping track of those who were coming to the United States. One thing that can happen, just to give a brief example, is that we might issue a visa to a foreigner, and then that foreigner could give his passport to another foreigner, and when he shows up at the border, we can't tell. These digital fingerprints help us prevent human trafficking and other illegal crimes. They're vital to our security. Now, one other point I'd like to just point out to you is we treat all of our applicants from all countries the same, whether they're from Lesotho or whether they're from somewhere else. In fact, even if you came from Mars, we would treat your visa application exactly the same way. Our standards are equal. Applicants from all around the world are required to be fingerprinted.
Right. Mr. Matthew, right now Lesotho has over 1,100 troops in Iraq and 500 troops in Afghanistan. And many people believe that these wars are America's wars. And since we've been in Iraq and Afghanistan, 36 of our soldiers have died. Yeah. And when some of those soldiers go to apply for a visa or their family members and they're refused or they're treated badly, you know, how do you justify refusing visa applicants from one of your allies and from a country who has supported you in your war on terror?
Well, first of all, I want to say if there are instances where Lesotanis, especially those who are fighting alongside American troops in Iraq or Afghanistan, feel like they've been treated less than perfectly when they've come to the embassy, we regret it. American standards for visa applicants include the provision that we treat them like customers and we treat them well. And if we're not living up to that obligation, that would be something that we regret. Mm-hmm. Now, like I said, when it comes to the individual visa applicant, we treat them according to the standards that are spelled out in American law. Mm-hmm. Whether they work for the military or another organization, the applicant has a burden of proof to show that their ties to their home country are strong enough that they would come back after a brief visit to the U.S. We want more of those types of visitors. We've opened the doors wide, and we want them to come and then come back.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Matthew, it's no secret to the Lesotho citizens that Muslim applicants, many times their visa applications take much more time to process, and in many cases there are people who feel that the United States government discriminates against Muslims and that you don't want Muslims in your country, which can be, that's why the visas take so long to be processed and are refused more often than issued. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, that would be completely inaccurate, the perception that you outlined. The truth is, whether you're a Muslim or a Christian, or like I said, if you're from another religion or another planet, we want you to come to the United States as long as you're qualified.
Mm-hmm. As you know, Mr. Matthew, U.S. citizens do not require a visa to visit Lesotho.
That's right.
Lesotho, pardon me.
Sure.
Why do you then require our citizens to have a visa to visit the United States and charge them $131 U.S. dollars for that visa application? Aren't you violating the reciprocity agreement on visa issuance fees?
Well, I hear two questions in there. Let me touch on the first question, which is why do we require a visa application? We believe, and I think that most Lesothonis would also agree, that it's a fundamental duty of any country to protect its borders. And what that means is to be aware of who's coming and who's going. Now, in Lesotho, the way that they protect their borders is foreign travelers come in, they are screened at the airport. What we have found is because of the volume of visitors from overseas who want to come to the U.S., it is a more efficient and smooth process if we conduct some of that screening overseas rather than have such long lines at our airports. Mm-hmm. Could you remind me what was your second question?
The reciprocity agreement for the fees.
Well, that's a bit of a technical detail, and I have to admit I'm not a lawyer. We do have legal agreements between our two countries. My basic understanding is that that legal agreement stipulates or requires that if one country imposes a fee on the issuance of a visa, then the other country could do that as well. My understanding of the legal technicality is the issuance fee is not the same as an application fee. And while the U.S. does impose an application fee, as I said, we impose that equally on applicants all around the world. And the fact is, the money that we collect from those application fees are used entirely for our visa processing. They don't go to the American general budget. Instead, they're used to improve and fund our better security programs. For example, around the world, over the past 3 years, the United States government has added 600 consular positions. We're only able to do that, which leads to shorter lines, shorter wait times, and better customer service because of the fees that we are able to charge for visa applications.
Okay, thank you.